relevant to the customers in the market can integrate into this total flow. In the discussion today, I'm honored to be joined by Greg Sigenthaler, Vice President of Supply Chain for Grande Cheese, Jason Michel, Vice President of Marketing from Valley Queen Cheese, Jim Wynn, who runs Cottonwood Dairy and ships to Grande Cheese, Kevin Sousa, who manages and is the owner of Victory Farm South, who ships to Valley Queen. Gentlemen, are you with me right now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let's get started on an easy subject, communication and trust. When I think about these, I'm inclined towards ideas like shared values, common language, transparency, and relationships. Moreover, I'm thinking about a phrase that one of my mentors told me about called lead the heart and teach the mind. Jason, as demonstrated in the video, Valley Queen and your member farms have a close-knit relationship. Jason, can you go into a little more depth about the informal meetings that you, the CEO, and members of the farm had?
Yeah, so we occasionally get out to the farm. Doug Wilkie, our CEO, and myself go out and visit with several of our large farms whenever we can. And in the video, Kevin referred to those meetings. And what we do is just try to go out and visit with our milk suppliers, reinforce that partnership that we have with them. Kevin said it well in that video that there's a mutual reliance on each other. The plants in our region are full to capacity almost all the time. And so making sure that those farms know they've got a viable market and at Valley Queen is important. The topic of growth is always on the dairyman's mind. In our region, our dairymen are trying to grow as best they can. And so they want to know that we also have that same type of growth mentality. So the topic of growth always comes up. We also want to know what we can do better for them. Kevin's running a big business there, just like we are, and we want to know what we can do to provide the best market for his milk that we can. So it's a chance to have just a good, honest, and frank discussion with our suppliers who are just really, really important to the growth and success of Valley Queen.
Kevin, can you share a little bit about how values come from this relationship and how that's helped you with your farm business plan?
Yeah, like Jason said, we stay in contact all the time. It's a pretty small community, so we see each other out in the community also. It helps us if we're having some issues, they get to us quickly, we can resolve those issues. And it's just peace of mind to know you have a place to ship your milk to every day. I know some people this last spring ran into some problems with supply management because of the COVID problem. And it's just nice to know that we have a good company to work with and we're able to have a good place to ship our milk.
Yeah, Kevin and Jason, I think what's interesting and what I hear is that we share not only a language and a desire to succeed together, but we also share our community. Greg, we talked before about this, and Grande has implemented some corporate social responsibility platforms to help communicate and to build trust within the member community. Can you speak a little bit more about this process and what Grande reviews?
Sure, and I thought Peter's opening comments yesterday played perfectly into this conversation. So you might remember one of his quotes. It was the Gretzky quote that said, "Skate to where the puck will be, not where the puck is." And then that kind of leads into our four really pillars of corporate responsibility. But before I get to those, he also had an interesting quote around awareness, ownership, ambition, and alignment. And I think these are key to all four areas I'm going to discuss next. And our first corporate social responsibility is business sustainability, to know that both Grande and our producers are going to be in business and continue to invest for the long term. Within that, we conduct audits such as the farm audit that I'm sure everyone's familiar with. The second sustainability pillar is the environmental awareness component, not just environmental awareness on the farm side, but also within our facilities. The third is associates, our most valuable resource, probably on the dairies as well as in our plants. And then fourth, and certainly not least, the community the need for outreach and involvement.
Greg, when I hear that, when I hear about the audit and I hear about environmental awareness, the associations and the community, and we talked a little bit about community, but I wonder, when you, Jim, think about this, how did it feel to have Grande involved at that level on your farm?
It was huge for us when we first started the farm program here a couple years ago. Lynn Thornton was out of the dairies here and doing a thorough inspection. We always think we're trying to do a really good job all the time, but she pointed out a few things to us that maybe would help us in the long run, and which they have. And it's looking at the consumer. That's what it's all about. And they're very, very good at getting that message across to us producers. We really appreciate that.
And Jim, when you think about how having someone else on your operation felt, did it at first, was it awkward, and did it feel better as the relationship developed? We got a unique situation with Grande. Our previous processor, they were just looking for pounds of milk, and when we made the switch to Grande, we were very, very fortunate. Greg and I grew up 6-7 miles apart from each other. Our field man grew up about the same distance. I've known these guys since I was a little kid, and that means a lot, being in business with guys that you know and trust. I think when we first started with Grande, the difference between our previous processor, like I said, they were just looking for pounds of milk. Grande is really, really fanatic about quality, and being with them the first year or two, we had some issues. I know my field man and we had a chat one day. We talked about it to this day yet. I told him one day, I said, Randy, I don't think we'll ever please you. I think, we're trying to do as good a job as you can here, and it just don't seem like it's good enough. And he said, just hold on. You guys are doing great. It's going to be great. And we did. We kept doing, implementing everything they told us to do. They got a milk quality veterinarian on staff that has been a huge plus for our dairy. In fact, we got to be a close, lifelong time friend with us too. And now he's since retired, and the new one that just took over here last year, we're looking for a great relationship with him too. But Grande and us is just like, I believe Kevin mentioned earlier too, it's just like family. We work very, very well together. Like I said, we struggled there the first year or so to try to get everything in line what Grande was talking to, but they've taken us to a new level with milk quality. And I think the herd veterinarian from Grande and Greg, Randy, and all the guys at Grande to take us to that point. Yeah. Jim, it sounds, and Greg, it sounds like this is a relationship that was built on some common values and some common experiences, but it was also built on the idea that the relationship is good for both of us. And it feels interesting to me to hear Jim talk about the previous processor was really only focused on the transaction, wasn't focused on the other bits of the business. And it feels very much like Grande is focused on the other bits. And part of that goes back to the corporate social responsibilities. Does this happen with every processor or with every farmer?
I don't know. I mean, in the long run, like I said, we had some issues trying to get where we needed to be, but in looking back at it, Grande they were looking after us. It's helped our bottom line tremendously. To where we was with cell count and everything before with, our previous processor to where we're at today, it's night and day. Like I said, they have taken us to a new level, and we're very happy where we're at, and we hope this relationship lasts forever.
Jim, what I heard is that and thank you for that. What I heard is that the conversations aren't always easy, but it's about having communication and being open and honest with one another, really sharing across that. Jason and Kevin, my understanding is that communication is equally important as transparency. I think I understand that there was some time when there were difficult conversations with Valley Queen. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, one of the things that we had to implement a few years ago, as did everyone in the upper Midwest eventually, was the issue of RBST. Do we continue on with it? Do we go away from it? But what do we do? And really, what is the timing of that? And at Valley Queen, we don't like to tell the producers, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. We want to, and we certainly don't want to take away management tools or production tools that are of value to producers. So when the RBST train kind of started rolling down the tracks, we made the decision pretty early to make an announcement that we would be going away from receiving any milk that had RBST in it, but made that announcement about a year in advance of actually implementing it, with the thought that giving producers as much time as possible was really the best avenue for everyone. And I know Kevin's farm was using RBST, and it's a legal product, and it was a great tool for many. But having that conversation about, hey, Kevin, we got to take this tool away from you. That's not a great conversation, but I think we'll be interested to hear, how Kevin reacted to the news.
Kevin, how did you think this was handled?
Oh, well, the beginning, the first thing is it's you're kind of reluctant because somebody's telling you to do something that has made you money. But for them to give us a year long to decide how we were going to come off of it was huge for our business, because I do have buddies that milk cows that they had 3 months or 1 month or 2 months, and it doesn't give you all the options to get off of it in the way that works for your farm. So yeah, the communication at first, you're kind of a little reluctant, but then it's like you realize it's going to happen, and it was great they gave us that year long, availability to do what we needed to. And the field man kept in touch with us and made sure we knew, when it was coming and how things were going. So it worked really well for us.
Thanks, Kevin. When I hear that, I think I hear not only that the conversation of why we need to make this change, but also how and what needs to happen was a part of that conversation. Jason and Kevin, is it fair that that's a normal part of the conversation, not just directive, but rather the why, the what, and the how?
Yeah, as much as we can. I think that helps it helps the conversation, it helps the communication. As a private company, we don't publish an annual report. We don't publish our financials. We kind of have a different operating mechanism than maybe a typical co-op structure. But all that said, we still need to have some level of transparency and some level of accountability with producers, so they know why and what they know the why of what we're doing. And I hope our producers feel that way in our communication methods.
That sounds consistent. I mean, Greg and Jim, I would say that level of communication, that level of transparency is consistent with your relationships as well. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's a fair assumption. We try to maintain that open line of communication. Our field associate to producer ratio is probably like 1 to 15. So our reps are pretty much in constant contact with our producers. And when you go through crisis like COVID, it's not unusual for me to get a number of phone calls, and I think I probably heard from every one of our producers multiple times, which is good. It just they know that line of communication's open, and it just has to be healthy.
Agreed, Jim.
Yeah, I concur. Getting back to BST, I know my field man and Greg too. We when they told me they was going to take it away, I wasn't happy. I knew what it's done for us in the past, but they did also give us a year to get us weaned off of it, and which we did. And to be honest with you, if they gave it to me free right now, I wouldn't even use it. So I mean, I think looking back at it, I hated it, but it was best for us in the long run. Our communication with Grande is second to none, I believe. Every spring, we have all the fourth graders in our county come to our farms, and we call it Day at the Dairy. Grande makes pizzas for all the kids that day. We get milk, apple slices. It's just a great day, and we've been doing it. I believe this coming year will be I believe it's 8th year. I'm kind of lose track here, but Grande stepped up to the plate. We approached them about it, what we wanted to do, and boy, they've been there with us from day one. So we got 4 farms that we go to, 4 different farms. So they're very, very open about helping us out, and it really means a lot to the community.
And Jim, it sounds like these relationships are deeper. And when we think about building relationships, what I hear is there's lots of things that we do as human beings to engage the other human beings. There's lots of things we do as businesses to engage others. What I'm curious is when we think past those business relationships, those conversations, it feels to me like we probably also are looking for men and women who have the same kind of focus on the future, same type of personal dedication like you spoke about in terms of supporting kids in their education. Greg or Jason, I wonder, when you're looking at the farmer, what personality traits does the farmer exhibit, or maybe even what does the farm need to do or have to be in good standing in your relationship to really build a successful relationship? I'll start with you, Greg.
Sure. I mean, I'll quickly, it's kind of summed up in attitude. We've been saying for years, with the right attitude, anything can be achieved. Closely supported within attitude, though, and you touched on these, is vision, motivation, and decisiveness. Jim doesn't know this, but I'll pick on it for a minute. So, Jim's, I think he exhibits all of those. When we look at what he's done and to launch and develop LASA, the Farmer-Led Watershed Group, really, really big supporters there. It covered 3 of our corporate social responsibility go-gets really in one action. He established business sustainability, environmental awareness, and again, community involvement.
Yeah, I think some traits that really make the most successful of our dairymen successful. I think it's a willingness to adapt. Whether it was RBST or signing up for the farm program, or now being willing to go on a sustainability journey. I think you have to be willing to adapt. Digging in your heels in this type of consumer environment just isn't going to be successful. And kind of along with that willingness to adapt, I think it's a willingness to be open-minded. Consumers can be demanding and they might seem irrational at times, but at the end of the day, they get to decide, what we do and how we do it. And so if you're not willing to adapt to that, if you're not willing to be open-minded to that concept, this is going to be a tough industry to succeed in.
For sure. Gentlemen, when I hear your conversation and what you just said, Greg talking on maybe specifically on Jim or just generally, and Jason talking about Kevin, what I'm reminded of and would want to underline is that what you're looking for in them probably is a reflection of what they're looking for in you too. It's what builds a good relationship. And when I think about that, Greg, what I heard you talk about is a vision, maybe an orientation towards change and innovation. They're willing to discuss and have notions and ideas like sustainability brought to the table and not resisted outright. And Jason, for you, the ability to adapt and not dig your heels in to think about what is in fact going to be moving us forward. And in this case, you mentioned consumers, which could seem fickle, but at the end of the day, they are in many cases driving that entire agri-value food chain. Jim and Kevin, I wonder, the same question, but put in a different direction. What traits are you looking for in your processors, those relationships? What does your field staff need to see in order to build this successful relationship? Jim, I'll start with you.
Well, as Greg alluded, he gave me credit for starting the LASA stewardship group, which I did, but I had some great partners. I had DBA, Edge, and Dairy Strong Sustainability behind me, and BSSA, Edge, and DBA. If it wouldn't have been for them, we wouldn't be where we're at today. With Greg's company, since we've launched LASA, we got a pilot project going on right now with Grande that we are extremely proud of, and I think it's going to pay some big dividends down the road. But that's what separates Grande and our previous processor. our previous processor could care less about that kind of stuff, but Grande, they get it, they understand it, they know what the consumer wants, and that's what separates them from a lot of the processors in our area. And I really, really appreciate their fortitude in that.
So Jim, I'm going to pull on that string just a little bit. So your ability to put in a pilot project, do you feel like your relationship with your previous processor wouldn't have been open to that they would have seen that as a distraction rather than a possible enhancement or improvement?
It wouldn't even been on the radar.
Not even on the radar.
No.
Wow, Greg or Jason, is that a normal part of your business practice to support and help with ideation, the idea of innovation to change?
Yeah, I would say it is. Again, like Jason alluded to, you have to listen to the customer. And, we as in dairy, we do a really good job of utilizing every component that's in that milk. So we buy Jim's milk, we essentially take it apart, we keep what we need to put into our products, and then we remarket what we don't. Sometimes what we remarket ends up within a consumer packaged good company that might have a global influence, and we all know the environmental button's a hot button. So even though our pizzeria cheese customer might not necessarily care right now about certain environmental issues, we know other components within that milk and customers within that milk certainly do. So we've got to bring that conversation back to the producer, and we're doing that. We know we can get better at it, and as it was stated yesterday, it's uncomfortable, but sometimes you have to lean into those conversations and just move so you don't get run over.
Jason, before I go back to Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, so Scott, one of the ways we kind of test that some of these ideas and really even test the relationship is, we bring customers out to Kevin's farm, on a routine basis, and this might be anywhere from cheese buyers to people that are in the chocolate business or buyers of our ingredients. Bring them out and show them around Kevin's farm. And just, what are the questions they're asking? Without having a real big script in front of us, it's just, hey, what do you see here on this farm? What makes you uncomfortable about what you see with 5,000 cows under one roof? What makes you what questions do you have? And by having those types of conversations and allowing Kevin to interact with those customers, I think we get a real sense of how does the whole supply chain feel about what Kevin's doing, what we're doing, and what their role is in it. So,
Kevin, on that?
Yeah, it's fun for us to have those people out. I mean, we're kind of an open book dairy here. We don't have anything to hide. Valley Queen also for the community. I mean, we're a small community. Valley Queen's a big employer of the community. Me and my family, we moved here 22 years ago from California, so we want to be a big part of the community too. So me looking at Valley Queen, their community involvement, and we're always open doors for them to bring people out.
Absolutely. It occurs to me that there's lots of different tools that we're talking about. A lot of it falls back to trust. It also feels like we're all oriented towards the future and moreover, sharing seats at the same table. And when I use that analogy, what I'm thinking about is if we weren't prepared to sit across the table from one another, if we weren't prepared quite literally to break bread with one another, we might not have the same trusting relationship. When I think about this, we all have a responsibility to hear what's being said, and we really only have three choices. We can either outright reject what someone's saying, we can ignore it, or we can embrace it. And what I'm hearing right now between our four organizations is that you all are seated at the table, working with one another, embracing these changes together, trusting one another to help enhance one another's business. What it feels like, and I wonder, is it fair to say that from the farm, we're seeing well past the farm gate, and from the processors, we're sharing what we see up and downstream? Is that fair? Do we share those responsibilities?
I think we do. We're on a journey. And, you know, my 30 years in this business, in the early years, we didn't share a lot. I'm not sure there was a lot of visibility past the driveway or past maybe the, you know, the plants. Today, to be successful, you must have transparency, you must have trust, and certainly awareness and action.
Transparency is a pretty big word. We talk about transparency and we talk about sustainability and others. I wonder, I'm going to look at Jim or Kevin, when you think about these words and they mean different things to different people, is there a shared responsibility towards sustainability and transparency? And if so, what have you done on your farm to do that? Jim?
Well, as I stated earlier, you know, we started this watershed group. I think that was a huge step, which, like I said, Grundy was behind us, one of our sponsors, and they seen the good that was going to come from that, so they were on that right away. But something else I'd like to add, you know, talking about, Greg mentioned, you know, we probably really didn't talk that much before the processors and farmers. I had the luxury of being on the DBA board for quite a few years, and one of the things we started doing is meeting with cheesemakers. And you know, we never talked to cheesemakers in the past. The cheesemakers are here, and we were over here, but we started that. We got together. I don't know, Greg, if you can remember. I think it was somewhere around the Christmas time area when we had our board meeting. And we'd meet, have dinner together, and maybe a cocktail or two too. But it really got everybody involved and everybody talking. And I tell you what, that was huge for the state of Wisconsin. Greg, I don't know if you want to add to this, but that was something I was very, very proud of being a part of when we did that. And we are still going to continue doing that. I'm hoping in the future. With this COVID, it's been a little sticky trying to get something done, but that's huge when you can have farmers and processors sit down across the table and talk, and it's something we never did in the past.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit. Jim mentioned it's the Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association, and it's just not necessarily the Wisconsin, you know, geographical cheesemakers. It expands much beyond that. I know Valley Queen's also a member, but it's been a great opportunity to really share policy. You know, where both sides of these organizations and industry focused, and how can we align and team together to ensure long-term success for our industry.
Yeah, really interesting. So I wonder, and maybe Kevin, you from your side, when we talk about the relationships that existed there, are there other things that you've taken on that might lean us in that same kind of conversation, that direction, that opening the conversation and making it easier for us to talk across that?
Oh, you know, same as everybody's saying, we're just, you know, we're two different businesses, us and Valley Queen, but we're interlocked. So we're always open to, I don't call it criticism, constructive criticism. I mean, sometimes I think farmers are on their farm all the time and we get blinders, and we need somebody to come in and let us know. You know, I always tell people when they come in, I don't need you to pat me on my back. I just need to know what I'm doing wrong so I can fix it. So.
And Jim and Kevin, do you guys feel like now your relationship is such that the two organizations really are helping you better understand and connecting you with their customers?
Absolutely. Getting back to the COVID of this past year, talking about transparency, you know, there's some pretty shaky times there in March and April, and I was, Greg, I'm sure I was a pest at that time, but I know we talked probably 2 or 3 times a week, or if not more. Or my field man, we talked every day. You know, we wasn't too happy about we have to cut milk production, but boy, we stuck with it. And I can't remember now, Greg, I'm trying to get it out of my memory, but was it probably 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks there, we were kind of back close to being normal, a month at the most. So just working together and having that trusting hand that, you know, them guys were looking out at our business just as much as we were looking out for them, and working together with it. It was a huge difference.
Gentlemen, before we go just a little bit further, I wonder, from Greg and Jason, your perspective, are there any other things that processors, yourselves, or farmers can do to be a little bit more successful in this relationship rather than just thinking about bigger or faster or better? How do we provide additional value?
I think from our perspective as a processor, you know, we ask a lot of our producers, Jim will attest to that. We need to help provide them more tools. We have a veterinarian, we have a bilingual trainer. You know, we're trying to do things to help them really deliver against these 4 corporate social responsibility pillars, but there's more we can do. And as we progress down the path of more advanced businesses around data, human resources, you know, contracting opportunities, there's a lot of things that we can do, and we're excited about getting after.
Jim and Greg, I'll ask this question first to you. I mean, when you're looking at men and women who may not trust the relationship, what else could we do to build that trust? What do we need to do to get beyond the sense that this is transactional?
Somebody has to make a move. You know, somebody has to lean in, and like it was stated yesterday, you have to take on those uncomfortable conversations. I think once the doors open and communication starts to roll, you'll be surprised of where it goes.
And Jim and Kevin, from your standpoint, from the farm gate out, what would you encourage your peers to do who may not right now trust their processors, may still be in that transactional process? What would you do to get them beyond that relationship? What would you suggest?
Well, like I say, we had the unique opportunity of knowing our Grande guys, you know, very, very well, growing up with them. So I was just so used to them guys. But I'd say just get to know your processor more on a personal level instead of a business level. That's probably going to take you farther than you know, talking business all the time. Get to know them, and they're just like us. They want the best out of us as much as we want the best out of them. Get to know them personally.
For sure. For sure. Kevin, anything from your side?
No, the same thing. You just get to know them, have an open mind. When we moved here, my field man, we played softball together. So my first interaction with him was personal. So I think you just get to know them and have an open mind on stuff. I mean, it's we're not always going to agree on everything, but we have to come to a mutual agreement.
Sure. I wonder. So this is perhaps a hot potato, and so I'll see who wants to catch this one. This goes to all of us. You know, there are some out there who believe the government needs to be more actively involved in controlling the milk supply. In your business, either side of this, do you feel that relationships between processors and farms are effectively managing the supply and market opportunities without government intervention?
I feel we are. I think Grande does a great job with it, and I think we do a great job with it. But no, I want government to stay out.
Amen.
We're capitalists, we're business people. We don't believe government intervention is going to solve the problem. It'll just create added hurdles that are going to provide another level of uncomfort, unintended consequence down the road. So.
Jason or Kevin?
Yeah, I agree. We do a pretty good job ourselves. Less government, the better.
Yeah, I mean, we're all talking about an industry that has largely thrived on its own initiatives, and we see, at least from Aimpoint's perspective, when we look at the near and long-term battle, we certainly see an evolving landscape where those who want to grow and change, and growth doesn't necessarily mean getting bigger, but just being more successful, can do so without further interference or involvement from the government. What I'm hearing from all of us is, let us take our capital economy forward, let us do what we need to improve the relationships, and allow us to lean forward in the industry. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Is it? I wonder for you all, is it in a world where everything seems to be instant and the relationship seems to be based on communication? How how would you change the communication with others right now? What keeps us present in front of each other?
I think
How do we
events
improve that? Go ahead.
I think events like this help, Scott. Anytime we can all get together and share ideas across the table from each other, I think it's a huge step for our industry.
Do you have any preferred communication tools? Jim, I'm thinking first, both Jim, you and Kevin, in terms of getting further information, engaging in continued conversations. Do you have any preferred way to make that happen?
Be nice to get back to face-to-face meetings again. These virtuals are getting a little bit too much at times, but it'll come. We'll get back to normal again. But again, I say we got just such a great relationship with Grande. I mean, we communicate very, very well. Whether it be email, meetings, or whatever, we just find a way to communicate, and it works great for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with Jim. Face to face is the best, but you know, with the times we have now, we have email, you know, we have we can text, phone calls. So, but the face to face, I mean, it just like in Sioux Falls, they have the Dairy Expo down there. I remember that thing started years ago with nothing, and now it's a great place to go and meet dairymen from all over the Midwest, and some even from as far as west as California show up to you. So face to face is the best.
Greg and Jason, I wonder, as your corporations are growing and changing, are you thinking about other programs or other potential electronic software or other technology that you might use to further engage and coordinate? Or is it really just, again, the human interaction?
It's both. I mean, you know, human trumps all, but I think as we look at advanced businesses down the road, I mean, data is going to play such a huge role. You know, concepts of blockchain and all these things that sit out in front of us. We're not quite sure how they all work yet, but the concepts don't go away, will require heavy data usage. I think also for a company like ours that's largely food service, you're not necessarily going to see the brand, you know, publicly. It's always good via social media channels, and we've gotten a lot better at how we convey some of our marketing and consumer demand side of our business. So producers can pick up on that. You know, they can start to track some of our social media posts and really see who our customers are. It helps connect both ends.
Interesting. I'll come back to social media in just a second. Jason, your thoughts on evolving relationships that might be more electronic or reiterate human interactions?
Yeah, I agree, Greg and Kevin, that you know it's the personal side of things will never go away. But Greg makes some great points about having you know, access to more data, more real-time data for both the producer and the processor. I think that'll be important. And I go back to what I said before, which is be ready to adapt, be ready to be flexible, because there'll be things coming that we just aren't thinking about yet today, but got to be ready to adapt to it.
Well, and this is for all of us, and I'll start with Jim and Kevin. As I think about consumers or others asking for traceability, they're asking not only to understand the product and its movement through the value chain, but in some cases they're going all the way back to the genetics that are oriented towards the animals we have. I wonder, how is the shift from consumer demand on specific milk quality changing or impacting perhaps how we ask our producers to produce, or maybe even for the producers, the farmers, how you are changing your breeding and genetics? Are you doing anything, Jim and Kevin, specific to the demands that are being placed on us by consumers?
Well, we've been breeding fat and protein in the herd for quite some time, and it's really paying big dividends now. I ask my nutritionist all the time, what the heck are you doing here to get our fat and protein to where it is at this levels? But he said, I'm not doing anything, but he you know, truly believes it's our genetics in our herd. It's paying big dividends for us right now, and I hope it continues. Greg and can probably add to that a little bit more what you know, milk price and everything's going to be down the road here, but it's breeding has played a huge role in our herd, and it's paying big dividends for us right now.
Kevin?
Yeah, we're the same. We were Holsteins when we came here, and we switched to Jerseys knowing we were shipping to a cheese plant probably 12 years ago. We've really focused on fat, protein. Now we're really focusing on DWP, which is health traits. We want to make an animal that we can milk and not know it's out there. And we're getting into the polled genetics, trying to make as many polled as we can also. So really working hard through genetics to make an efficient animal that we don't have to mess around with a lot.
Jim and Kevin, that's really incredible. I wonder, Greg and Jason, that feels like our gentlemen here are leaning into not only the market but also into what is being required of them. How do you feel from the producer side, not from the producer side, from the processor side? I mean, is that something that you're emphasizing, or is that just a happy happenstance from your farmers?
No, I mean, both their comments, these guys are on the right track. I mean, you know, milk is a bulky, perishable product. So, you know, distance to your supplier is your enemy, and time can be your enemy. So moving milk as cold and fresh and concentrated as possible is kind of an overarching goal. But you have to constantly be listening to what the consumer wants. And we do that, you know, we pass it back to the producer side as best we can, and we move on.
Yeah, and I think other than just the milk traits, and I think it's possible that we'll at some point be you know, continuing to breed for specific traits in the milk. I think that's possible, but I think it'll be kind of a testing to some of those sustainability practices at the farm, that the milk will carry some type of a, you know, whether it's a marker to it or just some way to attest that this was produced and in a sustainable manner, and the farm meets all of these different criteria. I think that's going to be super important.
And Jason, rolling all the conversations we've had today, I don't know that any of that would be possible if we didn't build the type of relationships that we've been describing today. That in the absence of that, it feels very dictatorial or authoritarian, or feels very much one-sided. It doesn't feel like what we're doing is trying to seek a win-win-win across the industry. As we get closer together with one another, what I'm hearing is that is these types of communications that, and the level of transparency and communication that's allowing us to have these progressive conversations that lean us into what's the future going to require of us, and how are we going to remain relevant, competent, and successful.
Yeah, you make a great point. The sustainability issue, animal welfare, all of those things. The fact that we're on Kevin's farm, you know, probably once a week, once every other week, with our field service staff, yeah, it gives us the confidence that when Kevin says he's going to do something, or when he tells us this is what he's doing now, we believe it. We can trust it. We have a pretty easy way to hold each other accountable to it, and so it does work out great because of that relationship.
Nice. I have one final question for all of us, although it's going to be oriented a little bit more towards our processors. And I'm going to read it straight out from the field. They say some farmers have been experiencing negative ppds, and it was upsetting to see higher milk prices and then a cut from the negative ppds. How can processors do a better job of communicating that with farmers?
That's a complex question to you. A shot though. I mean, you know, the driver behind negative ppds is a run up in cheese price. It influenced class 3. Okay, it felt like if you were in the cheese business, you should yield all that reward. Well, the reality is we're all within a pool, and we're going to share in the average price of all components. Class 4 butter powder never rose to that level. So, you know, if you were watching class 3 against class 4 pricing through much of 2020, there was as much as $10 per hundredweight spread. And when you average out the utilization in the order, you're going to come up with some negative adjustments because the class 4 guys had to move their products as well. So You know, at the end of the day, the processors don't drive the decisions on how milk is priced. It's really up to the federal order system and oftentimes you as producers, belonging to testing cooperatives such as Edge and others.
Yep.
Make the decision on how the milk is priced within a federal order system. The processors do not.
I think that's a great answer, Greg. And I'm going to cut us off right now because we need to pull Amy back on. This has been a very good conversation, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. There's so much happening in this dynamic market space, and we're all pulling in the same direction. The more we communicate with one another, the more we communicate up and down that link, I think the stronger we get. And from Aimpoint's perspective, the better we are as a nation to help have food security, to really exert that power that is exerted through the dominant market that we're in. We are a strong, healthy market that can continue to grow and thrive, assuming we all work on it and pull in the same directions. So I'm going to turn it back to Amy right now. Amy?